begin with Madame Ferrari for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister, for being here today. Minister, on October 24th, there were a plethora of childcare operators who came to Ottawa from British Columbia, Ontario, and Alberta on their own dime, simply to be heard, but you did not meet with them. Why?
Thank you for the question. I meet regularly with childcare operators across this country. On that particular day, I can't tell you exactly what I was doing. I believe my staff perhaps met with them, I think it was the day before, but I'm always open to meeting with childcare operators whenever and wherever I can.
So that's just false. The organizer of that group wrote to you saying that your staff absolutely did go outside, but instead to take photos, these are her words, within minutes of our meeting start time for the apparent purpose of further mocking, discrediting, and shaming those present on social media by questioning the group size. So she has written to you multiple times, and including yesterday on December 2nd. So they represent 150,000 licensed childcare spaces, or more than 15% of all licensed childcare spaces, saying that you will meet with everyone. Will you commit today to meeting with this group?
Respectfully, nothing that I said in my previous statement was false. My team did meet with the organizer of that particular group, and I am always open to meeting with anyone who operates a childcare facility.
So just for confirmation, you will commit today to meet with ACE National, Canadian Coalition of Childcare Operators?
Absolutely.
Perfect. Moving on, Minister, Sergeant Lisa Harris of the Royal Newfoundland Constabulary testified at Status of Women Committee last week, and she stated, "The Public Health Agency of Canada recognizes that children who witness family violence suffer the same emotional and psychological consequences as those who are directly abused. Will you commit today to protect victims and their children by advocating for stricter bail policies?"
As Minister for Families and Children, obviously everything I do day in and day out is ensuring that parents and kids across this country are set up for success. I will always look for opportunities to do that. As you, of course, know, there are other ministers fully engaged in that file, and of course, I support the work that they do.
So have you directly asked those ministers to enforce stricter bail conditions? Because, you know, as you've said, you are the Minister for Families, Children and Social Development. And in your opening statement, you said children deserve to receive the best possible start in life. Yet we've had the highest increase in child poverty in history under your ministry. Toronto's homeless shelters are now almost triple the number of kids they did 8 years ago, with more than 1,400 in hotel rooms paid for by City Hall. So again, I'll ask, will you advocate for stricter bail policies, as we know many women are being murdered in broad daylight because of the bail conditions where repeat violent offenders are out on bail?
I'm happy to correct the record. Actually, when the Conservatives were last in government, the poverty rate for children was 16.3%. The most recent level of poverty for children, which is still too much, absolutely, is 11%. We've put in place a number of measures that have been influential in lifting hundreds of thousands of children out of poverty. And I would put out, frankly, that every one of those measures you and your colleagues in the Conservative Party have voted against.
You know, Minister, it is quite remarkable for you to sit there and tell Canadians who are using food banks at record high numbers, and that this is the highest increase in child poverty in history. Children living in homeless shelters, for you to be so smug and say that everything is great is quite insulting to families. Moving on, Minister, Terry Lynn McClintock, who abducted and then assisted her boyfriend in the sexually motivated killing of 8-year-old Tori Stafford, has been allowed in the presence of children through a mother-child program at a women's federal penitentiary, as well as Tara D'Souza, who was Adam Lubukayan, who sexually assaulted a baby in 1997, became the youngest dangerous offender in history, now lives with mothers and children in a BC jail. Are you advocating? Are you bringing this up to your ministers? Are you advocating that sex offenders and child killers do not have access to children in federal prisons?
Sorry. I find this line of questioning and these innuendos completely disrespectful, frankly. Let me
Tori
answer.
Stafford's dad finds you completely disrespectful. Just
Can I
answer the
answer the
question.
question,
Yes,
Chair?
please do.
Yeah. So, again, as the Minister for Families and Children who wakes up every day with the responsibility to ensure that we look out for the kids across this country, I take absolutely every opportunity to do that. I live and breathe it, frankly. And of course, as a cabinet, we have conversations. We work collaboratively together where there is touching on various portfolios. And of course, I will always advocate for children's safety.
Then
And
will you commit to following up, visiting a federal penitentiary and seeing where these child killers and convicted sex offenders are sharing space with mothers and children?
I appreciate the question. I appreciate what you are trying to do here, respectfully.
Trying to do? What I'm trying to do?
Respectfully, yes, trying to do.
What am I trying to do, Minister? Tell me, please. What is it?
Your time is up. Madame Gray for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Illicit drug overdoses are now the leading cause of death among youth in British Columbia aged 10 to 18, according to figures by BC Coroner Service. As the Minister for Children and Families, you must surely be concerned with these numbers.
I am a mother, and I am the Minister for Families and Children. Of course, I would concerned about these.
Minister, do you agree that illicit drug decriminalization and taxpayer-funded drugs should never have been allowed?
Respectfully, I think this is off topic of the topic of this committee and what I have jurisdiction.
Respectfully, Minister, I will interrupt you there because actually you are here today to talk on your mandate letter. And in your mandate letter, it says that you're to work with the Minister of Mental Health and Addictions to, quote, ensure mental health supports are accessible to children and youth, unquote. Do you agree with the Canadian Centre on Substance Abuse that mental health problems and substance abuse issues are linked?
Yes, I do.
So as Minister for Children, shouldn't you be seeking to address increasing youth overdoses then, especially when your government-funded hard drugs are so often being diverted?
As I was saying earlier, there is another minister who is the lead on this. Of course, I have conversations with her, but she is leading this work.
So, but Minister, it's right in your mandate letter, and I'll also bring up that the parents of 13-year-old Brianna McDonald, who tragically overdosed, were very clear on this link, where her mother said, quote, I think a lot of the reasons she was doing the drugs was the mental health problems she was having. So your ministerial mandate is to ensure mental health supports are accessible to children and youth. Are you taking any actions at all?
As I mentioned earlier, of course, I work closely with my colleague who has the lead on this file. She leads.
So as working closely, what actions have you taken, Minister?
I have conversations on a regular basis with my colleague who leads this file.
So what specific actions have you taken on this, Minister?
As I just mentioned, there's another colleague who leads. I provide input. She is the ultimate minister who is responsible.
So you're obviously not willing to answer this question on any actions that you've taken. It's right in your mandate letter. I will bring up as well that Brianna McDonald's parents told the HESA committee that they were unable to access mental health care for their daughter, but she was able to acquire, quote, Ziploc bags full of needles, cooking kits, and pamphlets on how to cook the drugs and safely use them, unquote. As Minister for Children, should children as young as 12 be provided needles, cook kits, and instruction manuals for drug use instead of mental health care?
Of course, again, as a mother, as the Minister for Families, drugs don't belong in our children's hands. I think everyone in this room and across the country can agree with that sentiment.
So I'll go back to you again, Minister. What action specifically have you taken? It's right in your mandate letter on this issue.
Yeah, and as you read out earlier, my mandate letter indicates to work with the minister who is responsible, who has the lead
Right,
on
so
this
what actions
file.
have you taken? What actions have you recommended?
I believe I already answered this question, Chair.
No, you haven't, so I'll move on. Police associations are warning about the dangers of diversion of government-funded drugs, particularly diversion to children. A drug bust in Campbell River, British Columbia, found taxpayer-funded fentanyl molded into gummy bear and dinosaur shapes. So you're the Minister for Children and Families. Again, your mandate letter clearly states that you should be working with the Minister of Mental Health and Addiction. Have you taken any actions to protect children from diverted taxpayer-funded drugs?
Appreciate the question. Again, there is a minister who's leading this work. I provide input as she is requiring
So what
it.
specific input have you provided, Minister,
I
on
would
this?
point to a number of programs that we've put in place to help lift children out of situations like this, lift children out of poverty, whether
So,
that be
Minister,
the Canada Child
I'm
Benefit.
referring to diverted drugs, and you're not answering the question. What specific recommendations have you made to the Minister of Addictions
I've
to
already
protect
answered
children
this
from
question,
diverted
Chair.
drugs? No, you haven't answered it, so I'll move on. You and the Liberal government, in collaboration with the NDP, supported taxpayer-funded drugs flooding streets, parks, and playgrounds where children play in British Columbia, and this was occurring on your watch as the Minister of Children and Families, and you did nothing. It was only because of immense public pressure in British Columbia that BC decided to amend their policy and approach the federal government to remove of the approval. So based on the failed drug policy experiment in BC and based on the fact that you're the Minister for Children and Families, would you advocate to stop any expansion by your government to allow decriminalization in other jurisdictions, in particular in your province of Ontario?
Once again, respectfully, there is a minister who leads on this file, and it is not
You've actually
myself.
advocated for this in the past, Minister, when you were on City Council in Ottawa. So it's surprising you're not willing to answer that question.
Ms. Gray for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Minister, illicit drug overdose is now the leading cause of death in BC among youth 10 to 18, and you're the Minister for Children and Families. And we've seen the failed drug experiment in British Columbia. It appears during your time as an Ottawa City Councillor, you supported a motion for the Council to write to the federal government and include a plan that stated decriminalization of people who use controlled substances for personal use, in favor of that. So based on this failed drug policy experiment in BC, do you still agree that decriminalization of people who use controlled substances for personal use should be expanded in Ontario and across Canada?
Thank you for the question, and I'm glad to see that you've dug into my time as City Council, where I chaired the social committee there. I will just point to some of the work that's underway that I'm a part of through the Poverty Reduction Council.
Minister,
that
can you answer the question, please?
keeps us informed of some of these more pressing issues.
Minister, are you not prepared to answer that question today? You're the Minister for Children and Families, and you've seen the statistics on how drugs are being diverted to children. You've seen the statistics on children that are dying.
As I said earlier,
are you standing by your previous
as I
stance?
said earlier, there is no circumstance in which I would like to see, or our government would like to see, children having access to drugs, illicit drugs, anywhere in this country. And
Minister,
I know
do
that
you
the
agree with
minister is
decriminalization?
focused on
Point
ensuring.
of order.
Point of order.
I think the
What's your
minister
point
should
for
be
it?
allowed to answer the questions. Thank
I
you.
give a good bit of latitude. The questioner has the question, and the minister can answer as she chooses.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the Canadian Association of Chief of Police, who just last week put out a statement which said, based on the experience in BC, their board no longer supports decriminalization of illicit drugs. So as the Minister of Family and Children, would you stand with the Canadian Association of Chief of Police and stand with families against drug decriminalization anywhere in Canada?
I will always stand with families. I will always meet them where they're at. I will always hear their stories and work to ensure that we do right by them.
So I will now, the minister is obviously not prepared to answer the question. I'll cede my time to my colleague, Ms. Ferrari.
Questioning here the Minister of Families, Children and Social Development. Earlier in our exchange, you had said you'd met with the Association of Childcare Operators that represents over 156,000 licensed spaces that day, and they have been watching this committee, and they just want to set the record straight that that's not true. And you had said that it was true, so I just want to say that.
I did not say that I met with them.
No, you said your staff did, and they didn't.
My staff did the day prior.
No, they did not. It was October 7th, so you might want to get your facts straight there, Minister. If you're gonna go toe to toe here, have your facts ready. They met on October 7th, not the day before. So they just want the record clear that you.
Okay, they met.
Oh, okay. Sorry, details, right? What does that matter? You know, so I think what we need to go back to here, Chair, through you. You know, as I said earlier, Sergeant Lisa Harris of the Royal Newfoundland Constabulary testified at Status of Women, saying that the Public Health Agency of Canada recognizes that children who witness family violence suffer the same emotional and psychological consequences as those who are directly abused. And yet we have a minister here. Police-reported violence against children and youth has increased considerably. The rate of family violence against children and youth reached 362 victims per 100,000 population, and the highest rate since comparable data became available in 2009. So again, I ask, you know, I have article after article of women being murdered in broad daylight by offenders who are out on bail. And today we've heard you skirt a lot of responsibility, which is the culture of the Liberal caucus because of your Prime Minister. And you can smirk all you want. You know, I think it's insulting to people. Like, have some humility, I guess, is what we would ask people. And I hope the camera pans to the minister right now to show the smugness on her face. So my question is, will you advocate for stricter bail reform so that violent repeat offenders are not murdering women in broad daylight and children are not exposed to this family violence?
Relevance?
Relevance?
Yes.
Are you serious?
Relevant to
The
this
members,
minister.
you do not have the floor. The minister has the floor
Are
to
you for
answer
real,
the
ma'am?
I
question.
am, yeah.
Maybe you better read the mandate letter.
Ms. Ferrari,
Chair,
come
that's-
to order. Ms. Suds, you have a short
Sure.
answer, please.
Of course, as I stated earlier, we do not, of course, under any circumstances, want to see children exposed to any sort of violence anywhere in this country.
Match.
And as I have also already said, there is a colleague that's leading this work. I contribute, of course, through our tables and our discussions, but
On this
Chair,
file?
point of order.
Ferrari, the minister did not interrupt you or anybody else when you were questioned. Please show the same respect to the minister.